John, thanks for sitting down with me. I wanted to talk to you. I've really had a great time talking to you the last few days, and you keep calling yourself an amateur, which is
Yeah.
it's interesting because I've never thought of you as an amateur, but I guess that definition is different for everyone.
Well, I mean, it is and it isn't. By amateur, I mean I don't do this for a living.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get paid to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't seek out jobs in which to perform.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean I don't perform, and that doesn't mean I don't really like what I do.
I mean, you in your Penguin Live act, you really laid out a professional set of amateur magic that you can do anywhere. And I wouldn't even call it amateur magic, but it's that an amateur magician could do if someone threw them a deck of cards and just said like, hey, can you do this? I mean, you go from a shuffled deck to 4 aces and a royal flush in about 12 minutes.
Yeah, that's it. Is it a professional set? Yeah, a professional could do it. It's particularly designed so that if someone hands you a deck of cards, you can go right into it and have a fairly impressive series of card tricks.
So you wrote Card Corner for IBM for 18 months?
Yeah, a long time ago, like in the early 90s.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it that long ago?
Oh, yeah.
How'd you get involved in that? Because that seems to me an interesting way to participate in the magic community at large, because I think that there's actually a lot of what we would classify as amateur magicians who actually contribute in huge ways to the magic community.
Oh, I agree. I actually think a lot of the real innovation, at least in card magic, which is my area, comes from amateurs. Because they're not doing the same tricks over and over and over again. They're playing.
They're looking for that new thing.
And play is the thing. So, yeah. And as far as the Card Corner goes, I was in Chicago at the time. I knew some of the people who were in tight with the Linking Ring, and the guy who had done it had just passed away. So the position was open, and so I signed up for it. As it turns out, that was sort of ill-advised, as I was just also starting my law career at the same time. So I just didn't have the time to do it, and so we passed it on to Tony Econ.
Yeah. And so you got involved in that, but you were still amateur magician at the time. Had you written any books at that point, or?
Yes, when I was in law school, I had already written Impossibilia.
Okay.
And then while I was there, Smoke and Mirrors came out.
Okay.
Okay, and so that's like 90 and 92.
Okay.
And those are very well received, which I'm grateful for.
No, absolutely. And Dear Mr. Fantasy was one of the first like real magic books that I bought. It was Expert Card Technique and then Dear Mr. Fantasy were my first two books.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, I really dug it. But you're writing these books as an amateur. And I think that a lot of people sort of like look at books and authors and they sort of get a perception in their head like, oh, this guy's a full-time working pro. And that's why this stuff is so amazing and so awesome. And that's just not the truth with you. You put together a beautiful collection of card magic that is still, coming from an amateur. And as you said, that's where some of the greatest magic comes from.
Well, that's where the innovation comes from. Yeah. And Dear Mr. Fantasy was a very interesting project for me.
Really?
Well, because I was finding my voice as a writer.
Yeah.
And coming to grips with the level of detail, how much trick, how much theory, how much storytelling, and I did the whole thing by myself. I wrote it, I published it, and so it was a lot of fun, and that too was very well received, and in fact, probably even more than the first two books.
How did you come to decide to write your first magic book? I mean, you were sitting there creating. Did someone ask you to do it, or did you just decide, you know what, I'm gonna write these things down because I see other books and this also belongs out there?
Well, there's a lot of that. When I first started creating tricks, I was in Washington, D.C., and hanging out with people like Larry West, and they actually had a little publishing company, and I put out a small booklet called Mirage.
Oh,
okay. And then and then it became the time of desktop publishing, where
The
all
tools
of a sudden it became easier to publish books.
anyone can do. It's now accessible to anyone who wants to do that.
That's right. And some people came in and really filled that gap, like Richard Kaufman
Yeah.
and L&L. And so Impossibilia was with L&L, and Smoke and Mirrors was with Richard.
And did you write Impossibilia and then submit it to L&L, or were you and L&L already talking and then?
Well, I wrote it and then submitted it
Really?
to them. Yeah, that one. Smoke and Mirrors was the other way around. It was like...
At that point, you were already sort of established as someone who was creating interesting things and teaching in an interesting way, and a good writer. I mean, I've read quite a few of your books, and they're better written than a lot of the magic texts that I come across.
Well, I am a lawyer by trade, right? And
I also say this knowing full well that I just slagged off a bunch of my close friends.
So writing is a lot of what I do in my profession, but I actually enjoy that part of it. I mean, I really enjoy sort of communicating with someone who isn't actually there right now, but will be once they get the book and start reading it. And all the other thing is I get to talk about the things that are important to me.
Yeah.
It's not just tricks. There's some theory going around. There's some construction issues. And to me, that's a large part of the fun as well. So that's why I write books. And I said this in Dear Mr. Fantasy. I write a magic book that I would want to read.
I think that's really important in any project you're doing, is that it's not just like, oh, I want to put this information out there. You should make it so that you want to look at it. I mean, that's the way I lecture. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I lecture the way I want to see a magician lecture.
Yeah, I agree, and I do that too, and I have some very definite ideas about lecturing as well. But yeah, and
what makes a good lecture to you? I mean, when you sit down and watch someone lecture, I mean, to me, I like to see individual effects and then the explanation. And I know not everyone lectures that way. I know some people will do a show and then will go through and explain the whole show.
Right.
And which has its own merits, but
and it's probably more suited for a professional.
Yes.
Yes. I do trick explanation, but where I'm a little bit different is, I think, it is my opinion that for any given trick, only about a third of your audience is interested in it.
So true.
So the idea is to get through it, give that third what they need to know, and then go on to the next trick and try to get a different third.
Yeah.
So
because some people, I can see it where people they go, oh, I'm never going to do this, and they immediately check out, and then they might miss the thing that they actually do want or they are interested in because they re-engage the moment that topic comes up.
Right. And the other thing is with trick explanation, I like to cover a lot of material just for that reason.
Yeah.
One of the things I really don't like to see in a lecture is someone who spends the whole hour and a half on like 3 tricks.
Yeah.
Because
that's more of a workshop format. And if you want to be deeply involved in that stuff, that's fine. But if you're sort of like for a large group of people, you want to have a lot of different material for them, it seems.
Well, that's right, because it's a self-selecting group. If there's 3 half-hour tricks, you need to be interested in those, and hopefully you get a chance to choose them. But if you're there to see a lecture, you should cover the waterfront and show them different aspects of the way that you work and the way that you think, and give them something they can use.
So speaking again to this amateur magician mindset, where do you find where are you performing most of your magic? I know in your live acts yesterday, you mentioned you wait for someone to ask you to do card tricks, and then you wait for them to bring you a deck, which I think is so, like, now they're definitely going to want to pay attention.
Exactly. You got somebody who really wants to see.
If someone had to run down to Walgreens to buy a deck of cards, they want to see a show.
Yeah, exactly.
So where else do you find yourself sharing your magic?
Well, when I first started out, I did tables at a bar.
Oh, really?
In D.C.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And-
so you haven't always been an amateur. You've done professional.
Well, you know, I'm trying to remember. I don't think I got paid for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I did, but and also while I was in DC, I would do the occasional. Someone would put together a gig where they needed more than one magician. You know,
So someone would ring you up and go, "Hey, you know,
yeah,
I know
can
you're
you
good."
do this on this day? And
Yeah.
I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. And
You're a practicing lawyer now, though, and which probably takes up quite a bit of your time.
oh yeah, it
Yeah.
does. And I'll tell you a story. When I moved to Chicago, I had the opportunity to perform as a magician doing tables at a American Cancer Society
Okay.
event. And so I go to the one table and there's Governor Thompson, okay, which is kind of cool. And I go to the next table and there's the managing partner of my law firm. And he goes, I know you. And I decided right there, I didn't want him to think he wasn't paying me enough money or anything like that. So that's when I finally decided that I really don't want to do this professionally.
I had a day job before I came on with Penguin. I was working for a manufacturing company, and I remember about 8 years ago I set a very hard and fast rule, because I have companies call me frequently, go, "Hey, can you work our party? Can you work this?" And I said, if they do business with my company, I will not perform at their event, because I didn't want there to be any sort of impropriety, any double dipping, anything like that. You know, and I was trying to build my own practice, you know, my own magic practice, my own magic business, but I was missing out on a lot of stuff, but it definitely helped me sort of separate my day-to-day and my extracurricular activities. And I think that's interesting that you had the same experience.
Yeah, and as I progressed, as the time passed, I chose not to let the magic move over into my professional life. Okay,
So you're not doing McDonald's aces around the office.
no, I am not, and I'm not performing at the drop of a hat now. And I don't even tell people that I'm a magician. Okay, and but then, you know, word gets out over 20 years, and you know, at the end of a big case where we all go out and celebrate.
Yeah.
And, you know, if they ask me to do tricks, then I will.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. And
Yeah, that's very different than being like, you know, hey, I just downloaded the latest, you know, Nick Lacapo release, and then just rushing into the break room to do it.
yeah, right, exactly. Now I have friends who are the other way.
Yeah.
They actually wear their magic on their sleeve, and they're not averse to doing magic tricks at work. And some of them, if they had the opportunity to do it in court, they probably would. So.
I would be very interested to find out how that would affect the way a case goes. You know, if the silk is red, you must acquit. Oh, look, it's blue.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, it's like, knock yourself out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I mean, you know, I think that really does it for us. Thanks for sitting down with me. Thanks for having this
It
conversation.
went by quick.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
No, and thanks for sharing all the magic with us yesterday in the live act. That was really great. there was some really interesting stuff, and especially the downloads we did. There was a couple of like moves that I had never seen before that I played with all night, because I'm gonna incorporate them into my work.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's always good to learn something.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I mean, that's sort of why we do this.
That's part of the fun. Yeah.
Great. Thanks again.
All right, Eric. Thanks.